In 2010, a man named Matthew Hoffman committed 3 murders, and the bodies of those victims would have never been found if it weren't for his crazy detailed confession. Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney Morgan. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, you like this video, and comment below and tell me what you think. I want to start out by saying that I am sorry to my subscribers. I've gotten a few messages asking where I've gone, if I'm okay. I'm fine. I actually took a few weeks off because I got married. So I decided that for the sake of my own sanity for my wedding that I was going to focus on that stuff. But anyways, on to the case that I have for you today. Being a fan of true crime for a very long time, this case that I'm about to tell you is actually the case that really got me loving true crime. I was always a fan of like Law and Order SVU and Criminal Minds, all them TV shows and whatnot. But when this case was going on, I actually lived in Columbus at the time, and this case was all over the news. I remember seeing all of this going on the TV. And I remember thinking, as bad as this may sound, please don't judge me, but I remember thinking, holy shit, if he would have never confessed, this was like the perfect hiding spot for bodies. No disrespect to, the people that passed away in this case, but I just remember thinking to myself, like, why would you rat yourself out? Like, you could have gotten away with this. They would have never found those bodies. Please don't judge me too much. The case that I have is about a man named Matthew Hoffman. Matthew was born on November 1st, 1980. He grew up in Warren, Ohio, and as he was a kid, he really didn't have very many friends. He was described as a lonely kid. He was intelligent, but he didn't have a lick of common sense. In 1997, his parents divorced and he moved to Knox County, Ohio with his mother. People would describe him as, like I said, being very odd. The neighbors would say that they would see him doing weird stuff, like he would catch squirrels in his attic and he would skin them and fry them and eat them. People would also refer to Matthew as kind of like a daredevil. They would say that during the city parades and stuff, he would do dumb ass shit, like try to run underneath the floats from side to side to impress people. But something unique about Matthew is that he always was obsessed with trees. He would use ropes to climb the trees, swing from the trees. He even used trees to sit up in and spy on his neighbors. Matthew graduated from East Knox High in 1999, but shortly after he graduated in the year 2000, he moved to Steamboat Springs in Colorado. And when he was there, he got into a crazy amount of trouble. He was actually arrested because he took 10 gallons of gasoline. He dumped it all over a very expensive condominium complex, almost killing 16 people who lived inside of that complex. And he caused over $2 million worth of damage. But after he burnt down this complex, he didn't get caught right away, and he definitely didn't stick around. After he did this arson, he fled back to Apple Valley in Knox County, and he just began living with his mother again, like nothing ever happened. But the police in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, they figured out that it was Matthew who had committed this arson fire. So they got in contact with Matthew and they actually convinced him to come back to Colorado just to clear up some thefts that he was being accused of. So Matthew went back to Colorado to try to clear up these charges, and that's when they actually arrested him and convicted him of the arson. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, where he only served 6, and then he was let out on parole. But he also was being made to pay back that $2 million to the condominium complex for burning it to the fucking ground. After he served his 6 years in prison and was paroled, he went back to Ohio in 2007, where he began living with his mother and stepfather again. So now that he's paroled and he's back in Ohio, he started putting in applications for different jobs. And since that Matthew's always loved trees, he decided that he was going to apply for a job as a tree trimmer. He got the job and he was really good at his job. So now that he had steady income, even with this $2 million debt, he decided that he was going to take out a $38,000 loan so that he could buy himself his first home. So now that he has his new home, he's out of prison, he's got a new life, new job, career, whatever, he actually finds himself a girlfriend. And then he gets a dog. But the neighbors around this home, they actually thought that Matthew was pretty goddamn creepy because he would like build tree houses and play with the neighborhood kids, put the ropes in the trees, and neighbors kind of thought it was weird that he was like so childlike and so attached to trying to hang out with their children that it really creeped them out. And shortly after Matthew pretty much had like the perfect life, his girlfriend actually broke up with him because she claims that he would choke her and abuse her, so she left him because she thought that he was eventually going to murder her. And a few days after she left him, he went to work and his boss actually told them that they were going to let him go because he was really creeping out his coworkers. So now with this new house, and he was paying for it alone because his girlfriend left, his dog actually ran away, and his bills were piling up, and he still owed that $2 million. Something in Matthew completely snapped. And this is where his like weird obsession with trees got super creepy. He would go out and he would collect in like, grocery store bags, like Kroger bags or Walmart bags. He would start collecting leaves from people's yards, putting them in those bags and hanging them up on the walls of his house. And then on the floor, he would just let the leaves occupy the floor to the point where you couldn't even see that there was floor underneath of it. And when I say bags, like on the walls, it wasn't one here, one there. He would literally layer those bags of leaves to make almost like a wallpaper or something. I don't know. It was fucking weird. He legit had hundreds of bags of leaves. And because he had no money, he couldn't go grocery shopping. Plus, he says that he hated grocery shopping. So what he would do is he would start capturing squirrels and he would skin them and put them in his freezer so that he could eat them later. On November 9th of 2010, because he was low on cash, he decided that he was going to start robbing houses. And he started scoping out neighborhoods nearby, like the nicer neighborhoods. He found one house that he thought would be perfect to rob. So he took his sleeping bag and he went across the street from this house and he camped out in a kind of wooded area across from where he was planning on robbing the next day. The owner of this home, her name was Tina Herman. Tina had 2 younger children that lived in the house with her. Tina was an awesome person. Nobody had anything bad to say about Tina. She was a hard worker. She worked at the Dairy Queen that wasn't too far from her house. She was friends with so many people, lots of people in the neighborhood, everybody at work. Everybody in the town really loved her. So on that morning of November 9th, 2010, he waited for Tina to leave for work. Now the kids left, they got on the bus. Tina left in her truck and she went to work. But she left her garage door kind of cracked a little bit. And once she left, Matthew actually snuck underneath the garage door and into the house. So as he's in Tina's house, he's rummaging through everything. He said that he was in there for almost an hour when he heard the sound of the door. Tina and one of her friends named Stephanie, I'm pretty sure she was a neighbor too, they came into the house, and Matthew claims that this spooked him. It scared him, it freaked him out, he didn't know what to do. So Matthew grabbed a knife, and he approached the women with the knife, and he began to attack them, stabbing them repeatedly. I'm pretty sure that in one report I read that one of the women ran back to the back bedroom and he followed her in there, stabbed her, and then when he turned around, the other woman was there, and then he chased her down and killed her by stabbing her as well. Then if murdering people isn't bad enough, he says that the dog wouldn't quit barking. So he killed Tina's dog as well to shut it up. Now, after Matthew committed these murders, he says that he heard another sound, and it was Tina's 2 children who were being dropped off by the school bus. The 2 children came into the home. She had an 11-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. Matthew says that once they came into the home, that he immediately stabbed and killed the 11-year-old son, and Tina's 13-year-old daughter ran back to her bedroom, where he chased her down and tied her up with an electrical cord. So now that he's killed Tina, Stephanie, the dog, and Tina's 11-year-old son, he puts them into giant trash bags, and he loads the bodies into Tina's truck. Then he grabs the 13-year-old girl that he has bound, and he puts her in Tina's truck as well. He drives back to his home that's not too far away. Once Matthew's home, he takes Tina's 13-year-old daughter into the home, and he takes her down to the basement where there's a mattress and obviously tons of leaves, and he ties her to the bed. Then he goes upstairs and he grabs all 3 dead bodies and the dead body of the dog. He takes them into the house and he starts dismembering all the bodies. Then he begins placing the dismembered bodies into the trash bags again, and now he's trying to figure out what he is going to do. So now that Matthew has dismembered these bodies and he has put them back into the trash bags, he's loaded them back into Tina's truck, he drives out to Coco Singh Wildlife Park, and he goes pretty deep into the park, and he finds this huge 65-foot tall tree, dead tree. Now, as the tree goes up, it branches out. At the top of that tree trunk, there was a big hollow hole. So what Matthew does is he fixes up this huge pulley system using ropes, and he actually lifts up the bags of dismembered bodies and he drops them into the trunk of the tree. So once Matthew gets rid of the bodies, he's still left with Tina's truck. And eventually, people are going to notice that Tina's missing. And then they'll notice that her truck is also missing. So what Matthew does is he drives not too far away. There's this huge business parking lot. And he parks Tina's truck and he starts to walk out. Because he looks so suspicious, police decide to stop him and ask him, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you walking around out here?" And he tells police that he is just waiting on his girlfriend to get out of work. So police let him go. But Tina's boss at the Dairy Queen that she works at, she noticed that Tina didn't come into work, and she's not expecting this because this is not how Tina acts. Tina's a good employee. She shows up on her shifts and she does what she's, supposed to. So her boss decides to call police and say, "Hey, something's wrong, whatever." And they really didn't do anything for her. So her boss went to Tina's house to try to see if Tina's home, if she's okay. Once she's able to get inside of the home, she sees blood everywhere. And she calls police back, and police come to the house and they start trying to figure out where everyone is. They're thinking, okay, Tina, her 2 kids, the dog are missing. They weren't even thinking about the neighbor Stephanie. So with the amount of blood that was everywhere, they're thinking that they are looking for this family's dead bodies. So they begin the search. And while this search and investigation is going on for where Tina and her 2 children have gone, inside Tina's home, they see a Walmart bag. And in that Walmart bag, there is a receipt. And once they go through the receipt, they realize that whoever left this bag there and potentially took Tina and her children, they bought tarps and 55-gallon trash bags. So it's not looking good. So they go and they find the Walmart that this receipt came from. And they go and they look at the cameras. Now on the cameras, they notice that he is in the checkout aisle and he's wearing a specific shirt. And while they're reviewing the camera footage, another officer comes up and he goes, "Wait a minute. I talked to a guy today who was acting kind of weird in a parking lot. He was wearing that same exact shirt and he looks just like the guy. So they track down who this guy is, and it turns out that it is Matthew Hoffman. So they're doing their investigation, and while that is going on, he spent the next 4 days sexually assaulting Tina's 13-year-old daughter, who was trapped in the basement and tied up. And in his interrogation, he would say, "Oh, I was nice to her. I took care of her. I let her play with the Wii. I gave her books to read. I treated her really good." He said, "I would have never hurt her. I could never hurt her. I planned on giving her more and more freedom until I could finally let her go." And he claims that he was going to let her go probably around Christmas time. Police tracked down where Matthew Hoffman lived. They got their warrant, and on November 14th, which was 4 days after the killings, police busted down the door of Matthew's home. They all ran inside, and they just found Matthew peacefully sleeping on his living room sofa. So he's immediately drug out of the house, and he is put into police custody. Now the police are still inside the house, and they go looking for these 3 bodies. And while they're looking for these 3 bodies, they go to the basement, where it again is covered in leaves, and they're looking through these leaves thinking that they're going to find the bodies of these family members under these leaves. Instead, they come across the mattress in the middle of the room with the poor little 13-year-old girl tied up to it still, but she's alive. So now police go, okay, one of them is alive, where are the other 2? And in the mix of all of this, the neighbor Stephanie was reported missing as well. So I guess they're not looking for 2 bodies now, they're looking for 3. So after hours and hours and hours of interrogation, Matthew finally says, "Okay, I'm going to confess, but I will only confess and tell you where all 3 bodies are." And then he told him about the dog, so all 3 bodies and the dog's body. But he said, "I'll tell you where they are as long as you take the death penalty off the table." So prosecutors really didn't want to do that, but they decided, yes, we'll go ahead and do that because we just want to know where these 3 people are. Matthew takes them out to Kokosing Wildlife Park, down the trails, and he shows them the big tree. And he says, I put them in there. And this is the part that I remember mostly about this case, is that I was at home feeding my newborn baby, and I was watching the news, and I remember seeing this big tree, and that they were cutting a hole in the base of the tree. Once they pulled that chunk of the tree out, they reached inside, and there was a bunch of trash bags and decomposing body parts. They had finally found Tina, Stephanie, and Tina's son, and the dog. Since Matthew made a deal, they took the death penalty off the table. On January 6th, 2011, he was convicted for all these murders and crimes. I think there was like 10 or 11 felonies that he confessed to. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, which is definitely what he should have gotten. Now, Tina's daughter, she's much older now, when all this happened, she was pulled from his house and taken to be examined and everything. After that, she ended up moving in with her father, and lots of therapy, but she is reported to be doing much better now. And again, no disrespect to these people who lost their lives, but they would have never been found if it weren't for him confessing. That was a good hiding spot. It was just unfortunate that he used that to kill a family and just hide him in there. But during his confession, he did say, he said, "I never went into that house trying to or thinking that I was going to kill anybody." He said that when they showed up, they just surprised me and I didn't know what to do, so I just grabbed a knife and started killing them. I hope Tina's daughter lives a long, happy life, and she's able to you can't peacefully cope with all of this, but hopefully she's able to move on from it and live a somewhat normal life, a somewhat happy life, because Matthew is going to be rotting in prison for the rest of his life. So Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me for my video today. Make sure you subscribe, you like this video, comment below what you think, say hi, give me any like case suggestions maybe, and it won't be too long before I come out with a new video. I'm done with the wedding and I'm ready to get back on track. I hope you guys come back and chit chat with me again in the future, and I will see you later. Bye!